On today's show, Alperen Sengun has another stat-stuffing performance and a key defensive play late to help Turkiye survive against Sweden and advance to the quarterfinals round of EuroBasket. We're going to break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It wasn't easy. It certainly wasn't pretty, but they got the job done. Nehaber ve hoş geldiniz. What is up? And welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets and Turkiye basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On today's show, we'll be talking about Turkiye surviving against Sweden, 85-79 final score from this one. They advanced to the quarterfinals round of the EuroBasket tournament, and this was far from an easy win. This was a tough game. We'll talk about Alperen Sengun really grinding it out in this one. Not one of his better games of the tournament, yet still finding a way to stuff the stat sheet once again and making maybe the play of the game, a very key defensive stop again late in this one. We'll talk about Cedi Osman with some much-needed scoring pop, albeit struggling with foul trouble in this game. And then Seamus Hazard with his defense, which helped key the turnaround in this game for Turkiye. We're going to get into all of that on today's show. First, I want to let you know that the episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is closer than you think, and right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300, $300 in bonus bets. Download the FanDuel app or head over to FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. This was a tough game. And it was a tough game for a couple reasons. First off, the less important reason is it was, Turkiye did not play their best basketball. They struggled in the first half. And, we'll talk about the turnaround and what went into that and how they were able to, gut this win out. But the second reason this game was hard to watch is, my God, it was a 4 a.m. local tip-off time. I don't know how y'all do it throughout a whole NBA season. I really don't. I had my alarm set for 3:59. I woke up bleary-eyed, dazed, and confused. And I didn't tweet at all during the game. I was barely awake, and I finished the game and then went straight back to bed. Hang on. Hats off to you, my Turkish brothers and sisters, my other European Rockets fans. I don't know how y'all, let me get myself situated here. I don't know how y'all managed to do it throughout a whole NBA season, 82 games of that and playoffs. It's unbelievable. A testament to your love of the game, your love for Sengun, and your support for the Houston Rockets organization. That was a tough watch. I digress. But it was tough because this was not one of the best games that Turkiye has played in the tournament, right? They struggled. They weren't the same. They weren't themselves defensively in the first half. Offensively, they struggled across the board. Their percentages were not where they had been through the tournament at this point. They struggled with the long ball from three-point range. They struggled finishing on the inside, and yet they found a way to just put their heads down and find a way to win. Thank God for the aggressive play, and thank God for the free throws, because that's really what helped them seal this game at the end of the day. They made up a lot of their scoring woes by getting to the charity stripe, where they were plus 10 at the free throw line against Sweden. That really was the deal breaker in this game. Turkey finished just shooting 39% overall from the floor, only 29% from downtown. They were only 71% at the free throw line, but they got there 31 times and hit 22 of them, compared to just 12 of 16 from the free throw line by Sweden, which is what allowed them to overcome their other offensive deficiencies in this game. And that was Alp was a big part of that. Alperen Sengun, despite having a bad game when it comes to the efficiency, the scoring, the effectiveness around the rim, still was able to stuff the stat sheet. 24 points on 8 of 16 shooting. Again, not as efficient as what we've seen out of him so far. Was 8 of 15 inside the arc. 0 of 1 beyond it. So missed his only 3-point attempt. Was 8 of 12 at the free throw line. We'll talk about those misses because they were some very, we'll say, stressful missed free throws. 16 rebounds, 9 of them coming on the offensive side of things. And I want to wager to say that probably about 4, maybe 5 of those offensive rebounds were all literally off of his own misses because he was struggling to convert at the rim so much in this game. So kind of padding his stats there a little bit. He had 6 assists. He had a couple turnovers, no steals, 2 blocks, one of them very key at the end of this game. So still finding a way to make an impact. And look, this is the kind of game where it was very encouraging to not see Alp, I guess, kind of just, be laissez-faire, whatever, about like the misses. Like even though the offense wasn't coming as easily to him in this game, he still was doing the things he needed to do at a high level for Turkiye to win. He was still rebounding. He was still setting good screens. He was still attracting double teams. And, you could tell the frustration was there for not just Alp, for other members of the team, but like there were moments where he'd miss a shot at the rim and you could see him like looking down at his hands, like, what's happening? Why am I missing these shots? Or he would dish the ball to Osmani and he'd miss a point blank layup at the rim and they're looking at each other like, what the hell? Like, what are we doing? It was just one of those days where it just felt like there was a lid on the basket and nothing would go down without a fight, at least. And they were able to just power through that adversity. And again, they played an aggressive brand of basketball. They were physical. They got to the free throw line a ton. And that's where they were able to make up the difference. They were aggressive. Alpi got there 12 of the 31 trips for Turkiye in this game, to the charity stripe, hit 8 of them. You'd like to see him be a little bit more consistent at the free throw line, especially there at the end of the game. Some of those key free throws late. He missed 3 key free throws late in this game, and it left a little bit of a window for Sweden. Thankfully, they weren't able to take advantage of it, but that is certainly a thing where I think that in this game, really across the board, Turkiye, they locked in the second half. The defense got better, and we'll talk about the adjustments made there, but I don't think the mental focus was where it needed to be in this game for many players on the roster, Alperen Sengun included. And like missed free throws, that's mental focus. That's not being locked in and doing what you need. Sometimes it's also exhaustion at the end of a game. And this was a game where Alpi played 35 minutes of the available 40 minutes. He looked beat down, worn out, and exhausted at the end of this game. And I do think that's part of the reason some of the defensive attention to detail, the defensive pressure, especially out of the bigs from Turkiye, was not there like it was in earlier matches in the tournament, which is what allowed Sweden to get off to such a good start. So they were able to find their way back. They got back to their identity, got back to playing defense the way that they needed to play later in the game. But for Alpi, I was encouraged by him not putting his head down, not resigning himself to, it's a bad day, or, I'm missing my shot, so I'm just going to focus on facilitating. No, instead, he put his head down. He drove to the rim. He drew fouls. He got to the free throw line. He still found a way to make his presence felt. And I mean, the times where he was catching the ball down low in the post, Sweden was literally stacking the entire defense against him, right? They had one guy guarding LP. They had another guy standing right outside the paint waiting for him to drive. They had another guy cheating over at the nail at like the free throw line extended area. They had like 3 guys all just like kind of guarding LP, and he was having to like try and pick and choose the spots where he could find his teammates. And he made just enough passes. He found just enough passing windows to be able to rack up the 6 assists and generate some offense that way, as well as just flat out brute forcing his way to 24 points. Again, 8 of those 24 points coming at the free throw line, the rest of them on the inside, really battling hard and finding a way to help drag Turkiye to the win in this one, bringing them from behind, overcoming that first half deficit, getting their first lead of the game midway through the third quarter, I believe it was, for their first when they first jumped ahead. So I liked what we saw out of him, and maybe my favorite moment out of Alpi in this game was, despite being worn out, despite looking like he was running on fumes near the end of the game, the play of the game to me was the defensive stop that he got out on the perimeter with just a couple minutes left to go. I believe the score was 80-76 at the time, and Alperen Sengun jumped out to contest the ball handler in a pick and roll situation, and the ball handler for Sweden made a very ill-advised three-point shot at the time. Like, I mean, I don't know what he was thinking, but Alp was able to get a couple fingertips on the ball, blocked it, recovered the block himself, and was able to flip the pass ahead to Seamus, who was a little out of control on the break, but only had one defender between him and the basket. And as he put the brakes on, that defender goes sailing out of bounds, and Alp comes running up behind him. Seamus just pitches it back. Alp slams it home. Turkiye goes up 82-76. They've got a 2-possession lead. They've got a little bit of breathing room, and that was with only a couple minutes left in the game. And that was, like, to me, the play that it wasn't quite the dagger, but it was the play that they were able to kind of coast to the finish line on. Alp had the missed free throws after that, which were a little concerning, but he finally hit one at the very end, hit the final free throw of those 4 attempts. And Shane Larkin stepped up, hit another couple free throws, and they were able to ultimately just bleed out the clock and win the game. So it wasn't pretty. It wasn't easy, but the 12 Giant Men get another win. They remain undefeated in EuroBasket play, and they advance to the quarterfinal round. Let's break down the game a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about what made things so difficult early on. We'll talk about the turnaround in the second half. We'll get into the individual performances from Cedi Osman, from Seamus Hazer, and as well as Adem Bona, whose impact off the bench, even though it was in a very small amount of time, was very important for the defensive possessions that he played off the bench. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300. That's $300 in bonus bets to use across the app on anything that you want to get your hands on. FanDuel's great because it lets you bet however you like. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds in front of you. Hey, maybe you're feeling really good about CJ Stroud and the Texans this season. Go take a look at some of the odds there, or just take a look at the outright favorites to win the Super Bowl this season. Right now, the Ravens and Eagles plus 700 apiece. Right behind them, the Bills at plus 750, the Chiefs plus 1,000, and the Detroit Lions at plus 1,200 to win it all this season. Are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets and Turkiye basketball. All right, let's talk a little bit about, because this game, it was a testament to kind of the, again, the resilience of the Turkish team, the fact that they were able to, fight and come from behind it, and it had the makings, right, of an upset kind of ring. Like, it felt like, okay, here's this plucky underdog team, and they've got all the confidence in the world, and they keep hitting these shots that they probably don't have any business hitting, and they've got a lead, and they've got momentum. And it kind of felt like every time Turkiye tried to, fight their way back in, tried to get back to, taking control of the game, Sweden had an answer every which way. And it wasn't until that third quarter is where things really got turned around. Turkiye won the quarter 26-13. They doubled up the score on Sweden in that frame to completely flip the script and wind up taking what was a 7-point lead into the final quarter of basketball. But it was in part due to, I think, one, there was some renewed focus and attention to detail on the defensive side of things. The point of attack defense got a lot better. Ataman really relied on Seamus a lot in this game. He wound up playing 23 minutes in this one, and actually wound up starting the second half. That was a big kind of coaching adjustment that Ataman made, where he started the second half with Seamus Hazer and Furkan Korkmaz over Kenan Sapahi and Cedi Osman. And it wasn't for very long, because he brought those guys back in after like a possession or two at the top of the third quarter. So I don't know what the strategic reason for doing that ultimately was, but he did lean on those guys in particular throughout the game. Korkmaz getting just under 15 minutes. Again, Seamus with just under 23 minutes of run. he relied on those guys pretty heavily throughout the game and allowed Seamus to close. The best lineup that Turkiye put out there was basically the starting lineup, but with Seamus in place of Sipahi. And Seamus's defense was one of the key things that really helped ignite the turnaround in this one. He didn't like rack up a ton of, counting stats. He had a couple blocks in there. He had a steal in there. 11 points, 3 of 5 shooting. Like, it just, the stat line doesn't jump off the page at you, but watching the game, seeing his energy, his aggressiveness guarding the point of attack, really trying to make the Sweden ball handlers uncomfortable, trying to slow down Pelle Larsson at points because he was getting hot, or Hackinson, who was he was on fire for chunks of the game. Gattafor's was really good as well. But just seeing how Seamus was able to, whoever he was tagging defensively, he was always looking to be disruptive. He was getting, fingertips, little deflections here and there. He gambled at a couple spots too. He gave up a pretty bad 3-pointer late in this game at one spot where he gambled for the steal, rushed to get back into the picture, bit on a pump fake, and then the offensive player was able to step, get a wide open 3 off, and that was a bit of a back-breaking 3. So, like, you take the good with the bad with Seamus. But defensively, he was such an important part of the turnaround, helping to really set the tone, I think is the key thing here, because so much of the defense that we've been accustomed to from the Turkish team just wasn't there in the first half of this game. And it really felt like, okay, first quarter, you gave up 23 points and it didn't look great. Then Cedi Osman gets in foul trouble, and we'll talk about that in a second. It really felt like that second quarter, the defense started to get better. In fact, there was a point where they held Sweden scoreless for various stretches of this game. They held them scoreless for a little bit in the second quarter. They held them scoreless for almost like 5 straight minutes in the third quarter. And you could tell that Ataman needed guys who were going to be bought in on the defensive side of things in this game. And that's why he leaned so much on Seamus, even though Sipahi might be a better, offensive weapon, a better playmaker, a somewhat better outside shooter at times. Like, at least, especially through the tournament, Sipahi's been on fire for 3-point land through the tournament. But this was Ataman preferring to go defense instead of offense to really set the tone on that side, rather than hoping that the offense would just ultimately prevail. And you saw that with some of the substitutions, some of how he handled the minutes for these guys across the board. One of my favorite moments from the game was everything. It was all tied up at 76 points apiece, with 2:41 left in the game. So this is a few possessions before Alperen Sengun's big time defensive block and transition slam. But Ataman subbed in Adem Bona for one defensive play, and he put him in there for Alperen Sengun. And this was a 10 out of 10 decision from Ataman, because it allowed Sengun to get a little bit of a rest on the sideline when he was worn out. Gives him a quick puff, let him sit down for a minute on the sideline. But you put Bona in, and Bona, in the small stretches that he did play, he made some great defensive plays. He also made some pretty bad mistakes, and we'll talk about this in a second. But on this specific play, he subs in Bona for one defensive play where Bona was able to cut off the drive, the initial attack, cut off the drive, recovered on the pass off, gets back into the play under the rim, and elevates and blocks the shot attempt off of the Swedish player directly at the rim, which bounces off the Swedish player. It's Turkiye's ball, and Sengun is able to sub back in immediately because it's a dead ball possession. And like, that play, in the grand scheme of things, was all of 15 seconds, 20 seconds of the game, but it was such an important play because it was an important stop at a time where the game was tied up and the momentum could have tipped one way or the other. So an important big defensive stop that gave some momentum to the Turkish team. And then you also allowed Alperen Sengun to get that little bit of rest and to have a little bit more juice for that final little stretch of the game. I don't know if Alp gets that defensive stop on the perimeter where he's up and engaged and playing right there at the level of the screen and pressuring the ball handler. I don't know if he gets that if he stays in the game that whole time and if he doesn't get a chance to catch his breath. So that was at a very, very crucial, like, inflection point of the game that it felt like could have gone either way, and Adem Bona had his fingerprints all over. He also had a pair of like back-to-back blocks, literally first possession that he was subbed in the game earlier. And I swear, Bona's blocks are loud. Like, they're loud blocks. Like, when he blocks a shot, you know that shot got, it's not like, oh, he got a fingertip and like, he barely deflected it. It's like he's sending it out into like the fourth, the fifth, the sixth row kind of blocks. Like, they're big time blocks. He also, the aggressiveness on defense did unfortunately bite him in the butt a couple times. He had not one, but two different moments where he fouled 3-point jump shooters, and that just can't happen. Like, that's poor attention to detail. It's poor focus. It's poor execution. It's not, paying attention to your fundamentals, right? When you close out, you have to leave a little bit of landing room space for the shooter. The first one came at the very end of the third quarter, where he fouled him. And it's just, I don't know. It was bad. It should have been, I apologize. I take that back. First one came at the end of the second quarter going into halftime, and then another one late in the game. But either way, I think the good still outweighed the bad with Adem Bona, and the stretches that he was plugged into the game for his defense. He did exactly what he was supposed to do on that side of the floor. So shout out to Adem Bona, shout out to Seamus Hazer, who both really made their impacts felt on the defensive side of the ball in this game. Coming up, I want to talk about Cedi Osman and his offensive scoring pop and his foul struggles in this one, and how that kind of laid the framework for what became an uphill battle for Turkiye to start this one, as well as a check-in on the bracket to see who is advancing and who got kicked out of the tournament after day one. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets and Turkiye basketball. All right. I will say, I want to talk about Cedi, and I'll get to him here in a second. Just very briefly here at the top. This was not one of Shane Larkin's better games, unfortunately. Just 3 of 12 shooting overall. Really struggled. It felt like at times for him to create some separation when it came to the Swedish guards. He struggled against them. Now, there were some moments that he got, pardon me, some switches with, bigger players, some of the Swedish front line trying to guard him. And on those opportunities, he got some moments where he was isolated one-on-one, drove the ball in and would make like a couple floaters. He had an and one at one point that was really nice. But just an overall, like, kind of a game where he really did struggle. He was only 1 of 6 from downtown. So, in a game where everybody struggled, it feels even worse when, one of your guys who takes a volume of these shots, right? He had 12 field goal attempts, the second most field goal attempts of anybody on the team outside of Sengun, right? And so when your two leading guys, when Sengun and Shane Larkin are both struggling that way, and I know that, Cedi is it's Sengun, then Cedi, then Shane Larkin, as far as like order of importance, at least offensive hierarchy, if you will, on the Turkish team. But this was a game where Cedi really struggled with his fouls, right? And he missed a huge chunk of this game in the second quarter because of the early foul trouble. So what happened is Cedi had a foul, just a defensive foul, like a minute into the game. Whatever, who cares? But then late in the first quarter, after going on what looked like he was on an offensive tear, he had 11 points in the first quarter. He was on fire, just cannon threes. Had another shot, got to the free throw line. Like, he was awesome in the first quarter. I don't know where Turkiye would have been without him, because he was all of their offense in the first quarter. But then near the very end of the first, he got charged with an offensive foul on a play that, I don't know. I didn't think it was an offensive foul because he didn't really hook the guy, but whatever. So they call it an offensive foul. He's up to 2 personal fouls. And then on literally the very next possession, he gets whistled for his 3rd foul. And that is one of those moments where, if you're Cedi, you got to realize how important you are to the team. And this is what big personal gripe that I have. in any version of basketball, EuroBasket basketball, NBA basketball, whatever, is I hate it when star players, or at least the heavy hitters for a team. So in this case, I'm not going to call Cedi a star, but he's the second most important player for the Turkish team. So you have to realize your own importance on the court. And even if, playing the aggressive defense would have led to a miss or whatever, his impact and his ability to be on the floor more, and to, if he could have played, 5 or 7 or 8 minutes of that second quarter instead of being limited to what was ultimately just 27 minutes of the game, right? So he wound up playing almost 8 minutes less than Alperen Sengun, right? And for the team's second best player, that sucks to be missing your second most important player for that much of the game. So I hate it when players don't realize their own importance, right? And that comes in all shit. Like when star players take a take foul in transition. Now it's different if it's, into the third quarter, fourth quarter, whatever, and you've only got one foul, or, you take the foul and you'll be up at 2, whatever. That's fine. But to already be sitting on 2 fouls and to not have that mental awareness, and then to be whistled for your third foul in only the first quarter, that really made things difficult, and it forced Ataman to go a little bit deeper into his rotation. He brought in Bitim for a little bit there in the second quarter because he just needed some additional depth. He leaned further on Korkmaz and Seamus as well to kind of offset the loss of Osman there. So it ultimately wound up not, I don't want to say it ultimately didn't matter, but I do think it also took Cedi out of rhythm a little bit, because you start a game that hot offensively, and then you have to sit for basically the entire second quarter. He was no longer on fire. He had 11 points in the first quarter, 6 points the rest of the way. That's it. So instead of it being a game where Cedi might have been in position to really carry and put up 25, 30, whatever in this game, where he's just on an offensive tear all the way through, and you can rely on Sengun. He's gonna put up his points. Just blood, sweat, and tears, doesn't matter. He'll find a way to get his job done. Instead, you get Cedi, who then, basically has to sit on the bench the entire second quarter and is then out of rhythm by the time the second half rolls around. So maybe that's the reason that he started, on the bench in the third quarter to begin with, or maybe Ataman wanted to speak to him and Sapahi specifically and basically tell them, hey, if you don't get out there and play some defense, I'm going to yank you guys and go back to the guys who are playing defense. But it wound up working itself out. It was just disappointing to see, because Cedi was off to such a great start in this game, and this game could have looked a lot different had he not picked up those back-to-back really early fouls late in the first quarter. So that was certainly a big element of this game. In addition to, look, they were joking on the broadcast that Seamus Hazard and Osmani are members of the all underrated team, or all underappreciated team. And Osmani was definitely an important part of this game as well. A quiet 14 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, had a block in there, did some of the dirty work down low, was at times felt like the only reliable 3-point shooter for Turkiye. Cedi was 4 of 6 from downtown. Osmani was 2 of 5 from downtown. And then everybody else only hit 1 3 or no threes. Sapahi was 0 of 3, 0 of 4 overall. Sengun missed his only 3-point attempt. Korkmaz was, even though Korkmaz was defensively getting after it, during the minutes that he was out there, or at least trying defensively, he was 2 of 9 on the offensive end. He is not the offensive weapon that you got to go to. I'd much rather see Ataman lean into Bitim and Hazard and go for more of the super athletic, just give the 2 athlete backcourt guys open reign to run in transition and try to get some easy buckets, rather than Korkmaz, who just looks a step too slow at times and is a little too trigger happy for my liking, especially when the shots aren't falling. I don't know. They survived the minutes. That's all they'll say. They were -7 in the Korkmaz minutes, unfortunately. All right. Those are the final thoughts. Oh, and then Yurtseven got some minutes in this game. He played 2.5 minutes, and that was a nice little stretch. Didn't, record hardly any stats, but, came off the bench, provided some energy, literally forced a turnover, very first possession that he was in the game. So that was encouraging to see. But Elsewhere, I do want to highlight here. That's all I've got from the game. If I missed anything important, if there was anything that you think I didn't highlight enough, let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. I'm always curious to see what other people see when they're watching a game. So I read every single comment that you guys put on the YouTube channel. So I really do all the warm comments about my attempts to poorly speak the Turkish language. I appreciate it. I'm learning, and with each passing win, guys, we get closer and closer to me having to learn how to do the entire intro of the show in Turkish. So if they win gold, I'm doing it in Turkish. We'll see what happens. Again, I made that promise. I'm gonna hold myself to it. But let's take a quick look at the standings update here after day one of the knockout round here. Some upsets, I think, happening here. I will say, I actually don't know if Lithuania over Latvia is necessarily an upset. I feel like that game could have gone either way, but Lithuania beats Latvia 88-79, so they advance to the next round. So potentially right now we're looking at Turkiye has to get through whoever the winner of Poland and who is it? Oh my goodness. Poland and Bosnia, right? Yeah, Poland and Bosnia. So Turkiye will play the winner of that game, and that game takes place tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. But after that game, their next opponent will be one of either Lithuania and then the winner between Greece and Israel. And we got to imagine that Greece is probably going to advance. However, nothing is a guarantee. And here's why. Really quickly, I'll just say Germany beat Portugal 85-58. So Germany advances to their quarterfinals matchup. And then Serbia lost to Finland 92-86. Remember how much I talked about how important it was to beat Serbia and to claim the top spot in their bracket. One, we talked about this the other day. They are on the complete opposite side of the bracket from Serbia, from Slovenia, from Germany. All these really tough teams are on the opposite, and from Finland, who just eliminated Serbia. They're on the opposite side of the bracket from them, and that's what you get by winning the top spot in your group, by going undefeated, by taking care of business against Serbia. That very easily could have been Turkiye losing to Finland. Based on how the 12 Giant Men played in this game against Sweden, that very easily could have been them getting eliminated by Finland. And instead, it was Serbia, who is admittedly probably still a little exhausted from their heavyweight matchup with Turkiye to begin with. So I look at that final score and I see Jokic and Serbia, the favorites to place gold in this tournament, being eliminated in the first round. And I'm like, that's just how these, the single elimination games, like it's crazy, man. It's win or go home. And thankfully Turkiye was able to find a way to hold on, to persevere, to overcome the adversity and grind out a win against Sweden. And hopefully they can get back to a little bit more of an efficient offense next game against whoever it is, whether it's Poland or Bosnia. But that means that you don't have to deal with Serbia anymore. And based on how things have looked so far, I wouldn't be shocked if Slovenia got eliminated early either. But these teams, all those teams are going to have to duke it out with each other. The toughest team that Turkiye might have to face here on this side of the bracket is probably Greece. If Greece comes out of their first round matchup and then beats Lithuania, that'll be the toughest opponent that they face before getting to a medal placing game. So we'll see what ultimately happens. Serbia, nobody thought they were going to be eliminated. They were the team to beat. And Finland, Lauri Markkanen had a phenomenal game, overcame Jokic, who had himself a monster night, but it just ultimately wasn't enough. So we'll see where things ultimately lead. Excited for the next game. The next game for Turkiye will be played on Tuesday, September 9th. We don't know what time yet because we've got to wait for all the opponents to be decided for the other games to be finished up, but it will take place at some point on Tuesday this upcoming week. So be on the lookout for that. But as always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets and Turkiye basketball.